Okay, it's 11:40. Good morning, good almost afternoon. Welcome back to Webinar Wednesday, or if you're just jumping in, welcome. I'm Diane Michael with Callan Group Communications Marketing Agency, and I'm joined with my girlfriend and CAM partner, Lindsay Lombardi, with Coastal Living Association Management and Dominion Management. Together, we started Beyond the Boardroom 2 years ago almost. So it's been a great journey providing free education to CAMs and board members. Whether this is your first Webinar Wednesday or you've been joining us for years, we're so glad that you're here. Thank you for investing your time in professional growth and in the current communities in which you serve. Our mission is very simple, is to make quality education convenient and practical and accessible for CAMs and board members. Whether you're joining us from your office, your home, while you're traveling, I myself have run this for multiple countries, which has been great to be able to do that. We're committed to bringing you industry experts directly in an easy, digestible way. And a special thank you goes to our friend. Okay, this is enough, Minnie. Our friends Martell and Ozum PA, whose continued support has made these new board member education courses available. If you work with board members, please keep an eye out for newsletters and forward them to your boards. I also added the next HOA board member course into the chat. And also just be sure you are saving my emails every week to your safe sender list. If you're not getting a weekly newsletter from me every week, you're missing something. And that will prevent a lot of back and forth emails to us about, are you offering this and are you offering that? If you would please just check your emails, be sure to read through the emails. It really helps us as we process thousands of emails and submissions every single month. We're also excited to announce that our registration is now open for Get Credentialed. It's a 2-day virtual education event designed to help community association managers complete the courses they need before the deadline of September 30th. So I've added it to the chat multiple times today, but if you're just joining us, you're not going to see what's in previous chats. So I'll add it after the presentation. Lindsay, will you go over credits, how they work, please?
So for CAM credits, you're going to go to the website that we share at the end of Kelly's presentation, and you're going to put in your first name, middle initial, and last name as it appears on your CAM license. And then after that, you will also put in the name of the course and the code word that we provide and your CAM license number. So two most important things: CAM license number, code word that we provide. The code word proves that to the DBPR and to us that you were here, that you stayed, and that you paid attention. So we will only say that word like once or twice and throw it in the chat, and then that's it. If you don't have it, unfortunately, you don't get credit. So that's why you have to stay here, stay tuned in, and be present when Kelly finishes up and we give out that information.
Thank you. Okay. Meet your presenter, Kelly Whitaker with FCA Insurance. When it comes to protecting community associations, experience matters. And Kelly Whitaker brings more than 2 decades of insurance expertise to the table. A Florida native and graduate of Cumberland University, Kelly began her insurance career in 1997 and earned both her Florida 220 and 215 licenses in 2005. You wouldn't know it by looking at her that she was getting those in 2005. Beautiful woman. Throughout her career, she has held leadership roles ranging from operations manager and commercial lines department manager to vice president, building a deep understanding of the unique challenges faced by businesses and community associations alike. Today, Kelly serves as a key member of the team at FCA Insurance, where she specializes in helping associations identify, manage, and mitigate risk through the thoughtful insurance planning and education. And when I say thoughtful, it is so true. Kelly and the team at FCA really will take time to review your policies that are current and give you areas of opportunity, areas of saving, areas of risk. She's had multiple people call on them since providing these education programs, and she's been able to really open the eyes of some CAMs and board members. So we highly recommend her. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Kelly is a passionate advocate for the community association education, obvious by her being a part of Beyond the Boardroom. She currently serves on the board of the Volusia County Association Advisors, the VCAA, supporting educational opportunities for CAMs, board members, and maintenance professionals. She has also represented the industry through participation in CAI's Congressional Advocacy Summit, contributing to important discussions impacting associations across Florida and beyond. Known for her practical approach, industry knowledge, and commitment to helping communities succeed, Kelly brings valuable insight and real-world perspective to today's Webinar Wednesday series. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to attend today's webinar. I'm so excited to be here and talk about everybody's favorite insurance claims, water, wind, and liability. Unfortunately, those are frequent occurrences in Florida. So we're going to go over today what kind of events those are, what to do to prevent them, and what to do when the unfortunate thing does occur. So throughout the entirety of the globe, there are different weather events in different areas. Florida does have a very hard half of a year. It's the hurricane season, and it does make us pretty different from most other areas in the world and in the country. There are other areas that experience things like fires, tornadoes, and ice storms that we are fortunate to not have to deal with, as far as like wildfires and ice storms. Typically, maybe not last year, we did have a hard freeze, but the hurricanes do make us our own special area for insurance carriers to try to figure out what to charge for our insurance. We've also experienced a lot of flooding in the past several years. And then those of us who have lived in Florida for a while, we know that sometimes we just get a crazy wind or hailstorm out of nowhere that's not even related to a hurricane. So being able to prepare for those type of events and know what to expect is going to help you as a CAM tremendously. The role of the CAM and the board members is very important when it comes to risk management. You can do things to protect the building and to make sure that owners and board members know what to expect when the unexpected occurs, or even when the expected occurs. And now with a lot of the legislation, there are a lot of things that board members and CAMs have to deal with, as far as structural integrity reserve studies and milestone inspections, and making sure that deferred maintenance is not occurring in the buildings. We always say that you can tell after a storm goes through the buildings that were well loved, because they withstand the storms much better than the buildings who have not had their maintenance kept up with them. There are also things that you can do as the CAM and board members to limit liability occurrences, which is a big problem in the state of Florida. There are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to insurance coverage. I think most people try to not think about insurance on a day-to-day basis. They just assume they bought a policy, and when the need arises, they're just going to be able to file a claim and everything will be fine. And for the most part, that is true, but if you don't have appropriate expectations, you can be in for a lot of surprises. We found out during Hurricanes Ian and Nicole that a lot of people just assumed that if damage occurs during a hurricane, that it's going to be covered by their property insurance policy. And when it comes to flooding, that is not the case. And when it comes to wind-driven rain, sometimes that is not the case. Another misconception, people don't really understand how deductibles are applied and how there can be different deductibles for different types of damages. So that's something else that we find ourselves explaining a lot. If you, as the CAM, can educate your board members ahead of time, then that can help avoid some of the angst when you're dealing with hurricane damage. And also another misconception, people think that they say a lot, I'm not in a flood zone, but they don't understand that everybody is actually in a flood zone. It's just a matter of what your risk is, how likely you are to get a flood. And people don't really realize that flood insurance is driven mostly by loans. If you have a loan on your unit, on your home, and you're in a high-risk flood zone, the lender is going to require you to carry flood insurance. But just because you're not required to carry it, or you're in a low-risk flood zone, does not mean that flooding will not occur in your area. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people in Hurricanes Ian and Nicole that were in low risk or an X flood zone that did experience flooding, and they were not insured because they felt like they didn't need to have the coverage. And then I think the last misconception that we hear quite a bit, people get shocked when they find out that condo unit owners and homeowners are not required to carry insurance. There's not a law that says they have to carry insurance. That again is driven by having a loan on your condo unit or your home. So those are some of the misconceptions we see. I'm sure you as Cam see quite a bit on a day-to-day basis. So if anybody else has one they want to share later on, I'll be glad to hear it. A statistic that we were sharing in the past few years when we were trying to explain how the insurance market had gotten so bad was in 2020, of all the homeowners insurance claims filed in the United States of America, 9% came from Florida. But of all the lawsuits filed against homeowners insurance carriers, 79% came from Florida. And because of that, it was a very unattractive place for insurance carriers to do business. And now, since 2020, things have changed quite a bit. We've had a lot of legislative changes. The 2025 statistics for that was that Florida made up only 4.9% of claims filed, and we only made up 41% of lawsuits filed. So that does create a more attractive marketplace for carriers to come in and write business. And we have seen a lot of carriers coming in to write insurance in Florida. Understanding coverage types. Now, this is, again, not everybody wants to think about insurance all day, every day, but I get joy out of it. So that's why I'm here to share a lot of this information with you. But if you can pay a little bit of attention to your association's insurance policies and make sure that the board is giving it their full attention, then you can avoid a lot of the misgivings that come up later on. Hurricane coverage is different than your standard property coverage. A lot of people don't understand that is a differential in Florida. It's not that way in other parts of the country, but in Florida, wind and hail coverage is lumped together as a separate item. Sometimes you'll find those coverages on a separate policy, or sometimes they'll be included in your property insurance policy, but they do have different stipulations and different deductibles. We refer to a standard property insurance coverage as all other perils coverage, which really just means it's all other perils besides wind and hail. So that's going to cover items like fire, lightning, water. Then you're going to have a separate policy if your association chooses to, or if they are in a high-risk flood zone, they're going to have a separate flood insurance policy. Any property insurance policy in Florida is going to exclude damage from rising waters, storm surge, or wave action. So you can get a flood insurance policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is a FEMA program. There's many carriers that will write that policy, but it's all the same policy form, the same coverage types. And then there's also private flood policies that sometimes an association might be eligible for. If you decide to get a private flood policy, you will want to make sure that you understand the differences. If there's some type of discount that you're giving up by removing yourself from the National Flood Insurance Program, private flood policies are able to afford some different coverages than what the National Flood Insurance Program offers. So they do offer, like, pool coverage, for instance, is something that is available, but it is a small limit. It's only, I think, a $20,000 limit. So if you have an association that had to replace their pool during some of the recent storms, you're probably very well aware that $20,000 is not going to do much to replace an association's pool area. Wind-driven rain is also a separate coverage consideration. It's not very consumer friendly to have a policy written this way, but there are reasons why the insurance carriers carve it out. And wind-driven rain is differentiated from hurricane coverage by whether or not an opening was made. So if a hurricane comes through and tears out a roof or blows out windows and wind brings the rain in, that's covered under a normal hurricane claim. But if a hurricane comes through and just drives wind and rain through the openings in the windows or the doors. A lot of times, if the windows are older, they haven't been maintained, they haven't been properly sealed, then that water can seep on through. Sometimes you can have brand new windows, and just because of the force of the wind, the rain is still going to get through. And so that's a very separate consideration. The deductible could possibly be different, and also there is going to be a limitation for the amount of coverage. So usually you'll see a sublimit on a condo association policy. For instance, you might see a $250,000 sublimit for wind-driven rain. All insurance policies have exclusions and limitations. The limitations, a lot of times we will refer to as sublimits. So again, wind-driven rain will have a smaller limit than the full policy limit. Sewer backup has a sublimit. Mold can have a sublimit. Equipment breakdown can have a sublimit. So you want to make sure that you're aware of what the limitations on the policy are, and as well what the exclusions are. Most policies are going to exclude any type of ongoing issue. So if you had an issue that was causing damage and it went on for years and finally it became bad enough to turn an insurance claim, that's more than likely going to be excluded. Or if it's damage from wear and tear or lack of maintenance, you could find that there's no coverage in force for that. Flood insurance policies have very specific limitations. Flood insurance does not cover outdoor property such as pools, seawalls, fences. It covers a building that has 4 walls and a roof. And each year, your insurance carriers will send out declaration pages. You'll either get them directly in the mail from the carrier, or you will get them from the agent that represents the carriers. And you're going to want to make sure that you review those. Even your individual homeowners policies, you want to make sure that you review those when they come in, because things do change. It's not just going to be the exact same coverage you had last year. There was a news story recently going around on social media of some homeowners in Florida that left their home for a short amount of time, came back, and there was significant water damage, and they had not realized that their policy, when it renewed, limited their water damage sublimit to $10,000. So you want to make sure that you're aware of any policy changes and also of any deductibles that you need to be aware of. You need to make sure that you understand how much is going to have to be paid out by the association in the event of a catastrophic storm. Deductibles and financial responsibility are going to be a big topic, but not normally unless a claim happens. So if you can have a conversation with your agent, maybe even have a separate board meeting to allow the agent to explain to board members and to owners. I do believe that's part of the new state statute, where owners need to be aware of what their share in a deductible might be. If you're talking about a condo building and the value of that building is millions and millions of dollars, then you're going to have a deductible that is more than likely hundreds of thousands or even over $1 million. The deductibles for a hurricane storm are going to be typically a percentage, and that is a percentage of the building values. Sometimes people will call and think that that is a percentage of the repair cost, and that is not the case. It's going to be a percentage of the insurable value of the building. There are some availability of flat deductibles now, but it's typically going to be a percentage deductible. And that can apply either per building or for the entire policy value. And it can also apply per storm or per occurrence, or you might have a calendar year hurricane deductible. That is very important for you to know, because if you have a calendar year hurricane deductible, you want to make sure you're keeping any receipts, estimates, invoices from repairs that have to be made, even if you don't file a claim, because if another storm comes through, you can apply those repair costs you've already paid to the next storm. So it's very important to know what type of deductible you have on the insurance policy. The all other perils deductible is much smaller than the hurricane deductible. Traditionally, we've seen that deductible to be about $5,000 normally for a condo association. Homeowners associations, if they have clubhouses and things like that, it could be a $1,000 deductible. Sometimes an association will increase that deductible to try to save on the premium. So it's just something that you need to be aware of. We always see where an association will choose to increase that deductible, and then when a claim occurs, they forgot that they've increased that, and now they have to absorb claims that are under that large deductible. You could also have a separate type of deductible for wind-driven rain, water damage, equipment breakdown, sinkhole or catastrophic ground cover collapse. So be aware of any policy deductibles that are going to be something that the owners are subject to foot the bill for. Which leads us to the next section: who pays, the association versus the unit owners. We do a lot of town hall meetings to try to explain that to owners. People don't understand when they buy into a condo for the first time what they've really gotten themselves into and what the responsibilities are beyond just within their four walls. So an association's funds are going to be, used to pay out on claims, but a lot of times the funds aren't there. And so you've got to do a special assessment to get the additional funds that are needed. And unit owners can file a claim if they have an HO6 policy. There is loss assessment coverage. So it's important for unit owners to know that they could be responsible for more costs than what's beyond their unit. And also that it's important to carry insurance to have coverages like liability or loss assessment. Governing documents will typically indicate how insurance proceeds are going to be paid out, whether it's damage into a single unit or if it's damage to the entirety of the association. Even if you have multiple buildings in an association, the owners are still going to be responsible if damage occurs to a building that they don't live in. So it's important that they understand that ahead of time to avoid a lot of the complaining that you're going to get when it comes time for a special assessment. We do find that planning for the deductible and having a savings account for deductible costs by itself is something that associations are doing more and more of, instead of just waiting for a claim to occur, because there's stipulations on how you can spend some of your money. The reserves can't be used for whatever you want them to be. So having a separate fund for the deductible can be very important. Again, especially because those deductibles can be very high if it's a hurricane. And then in addition to that, if you have a storm and your damages are under the deductible, but still a couple $100,000, it's much better to have those funds set aside so that you're not having to special assess to cover the costs that are not covered by insurance. We see too, that's a lot of where the angst comes in, where people get irritated with their insurance policies because they're having to pay all these out-of-pocket costs. The claims process, we hear, is the most fun process for anybody to ever go through. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but if you understand the process a little bit, it can make it a little less stressful for you as a CAM. I do believe that a lot of contracts will stipulate whether or not the CAM is going to handle the claim, or if there's a separate charge that's incurred for the property management company to handle that claim, because a claim can be very time consuming, especially if it's a lot of damages from a hurricane, and it can go on for weeks, months, and sometimes even years. The immediate steps that you want to take after damage occurs is to assess what is damaged. Some people think that the insurance company will come out and tell them everything that's damaged, and that's not the case. You need to be able to tell them the damages that you have found. They're not going to go through every single part of the building to make sure that they found everything. You're going to want to take photos. It's very good to take photos before a storm, before hurricane season, even take pictures of the common areas so that you can show how it was, what condition the property was in before the storm. Any type of moisture that is in the building, you want to make sure that you're aware of. Get a vendor out there to do moisture readings and document what the moisture readings are. You also want to document what the cause of the damage is. So even if it's a hurricane, you want to differentiate, was this from storm surge? Was this wind? Was this rain? What was the actual cause of the damage that occurred? And you also want to make sure that you're acting very quickly because of the temperature in Florida. Mold can happen very quickly. And mold is not caused by a hurricane. Mold is caused by not treating the water damage in a timely manner. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that and getting it addressed immediately. The timelines and requirements for filing insurance claims has changed in Florida in the past few years. You now have a year to file a claim and 18 months from the date of the loss to file your supplemental claim. Adjusters are gonna come out and do inspections after you filed a claim. They're going to, so if you experience damage, you call your agent and you have that discussion with them. Hey, this is the kind of repairs that we're looking at. What's our deductible? Do we need to file a claim? And then you get that claim filed. An adjuster will be assigned, and you're supposed to hear from the carrier within 7 days. That adjuster will assign a field adjuster to come out and do inspections, take photos, take measurements, do everything that they can to go back to the office and make a complete field report to give to the adjuster that is sitting at the desk. You want to know ahead of time who is responsible for talking to those adjusters and attending those inspections. You very much want to make sure that somebody representing the board or the association is at those inspections. We as agents try our best to get out there as well and be there and be present for the inspections to make them go as smoothly as possible. We suggest that you assign a single board member to be the board's representation for a claim so that you don't have 4 different people calling the adjusters and calling the carriers at different times and getting different information. Normally, you'll see a lot of public adjusters coming out after a hurricane. We advise that you use a public adjuster that is familiar with the area and from the area. That way you know that they're going to do a good job because they're looking to stay and do business in that area. They're not just coming from a different state and they're going to be gone in a few months. Also get referrals from anybody that's coming out to the building. There can be delays when it comes to a claim. The carriers, again, they now have specific timeframes that they have to respond by. They have 30 days to get their inspection scheduled, and they have 60 days to either pay or deny a claim. Sometimes if people are not hearing back from the adjusters in a timely manner, and they might feel like they need to hire a public adjuster or a lawyer, and sometimes that is required due to the nature of the claim, but just bear in mind that that is not going to quicken the process. That usually makes the process more drawn out, but there are reasons for that. You want to make sure that you have contractors that you can reach out to when a claim occurs, because if you wait until after a storm and then you're trying to find a contractor, they get booked up very fast, very, very fast. So it's important to have a preferred list of vendors that you have lined up. We always recommend, if you have smaller claims that occur or even just small issues that occur in a building, go ahead and try to use those vendors for that type of repair. That way you can already see how they work and if you're pleased with their work product. But again, availability of the contractors is one of the biggest delays that we see when it comes to a storm. There are plenty of emergency response vendors that will come out to your building and do a pre-map and have a file on you and put you on their VIP list so that when a claim occurs, you can call them and they know exactly where you are, where they need to put their trucks, where the water shutoffs are and hookups are. So those are important steps for either you as the CAM or the board to take. And it's always good to do it before storm season. And to also let the board know what to expect when the claim is going through its process. Again, it's supposed to be a quicker process now, but there can still be delays, especially if there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of other properties that are also filing claims. The carriers aren't going to have as many resources as if it's just a one-off incident. And then the most important thing I think to know about the claims process, the most important thing is that the check that you get from the carrier, the first payment you get, do not assume that's all that they're paying you. That's what they have estimated your repairs to be as quickly as they can to get it out within their deadline. But you need to keep track of the association's estimates, invoices, repairs that need to be done. and you need to compare the carrier's estimate with what your numbers are. And even if it's been a couple weeks after you've gotten that check, a couple months, and you've now found that there's additional damages, you can go back to the carrier and submit your invoices and say, hey, either one, your estimates were too low, or two, we found additional damage, and submit those to the carrier for a supplemental payment. You do have up to 18 months from the date of loss to request that supplemental payment. So make sure that you do take advantage of that and don't just assume that that first check is the end of the claims process. Vendor coordination during emergencies, again, very important to have a pre-approved vendor list. And that could be all types of vendors. Obviously, painting isn't going to be as urgent as some of the other repairs, but plumbing, electrical, drywall, emergency response contractors are very important because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with water. If there's any type of water in the building, you want to address that as soon as possible, because if it sits there and mold grows, now you're dealing with more damages than what were initially there, and you could possibly have some coverage issues if the damages are from your lack of responding to what needs to be done. On an insurance claim, there will be some coverage for mitigation costs, but you do need to be aware what those might be. I know in Hurricane Milton, we had a condo association that needed to tarp their roof, and they had a few different options. They chose to go with the more expensive option because we were still in the middle of hurricane season, and their insurance carrier would only pay for a simple tarp, not the kind that they got, but they were willing to pay that extra cost. But it's something that you want to be aware of going into it, that it might not be covered by the insurance policy. You can do certain mitigation repairs to prevent further damage. So that is one of your responsibilities when you're reading your insurance policy, as I know all of you do on a regular basis. Just sit down and read through insurance policies. There are certain duties that the association has as a customer, and mitigating, preventing additional damages is part of that. So that's not something that you need to get approval of from the adjuster, but you do want to document it, take pictures before and after what you've done. Permanent repairs are something that you do want to make sure that you've discussed with the adjuster before you make those repairs and begin that process. It's very important to communicate between the vendors, the CAMs, the insurance companies. Some vendors will talk directly to the insurance company. You do need to have a point of contact, whether it's you as the CAM, whether there's a board member that has, been selected to be the point of contact for the association. But it's very important to keep that communication open. Make sure that you're calling. Don't just sit there and wait for the insurance company to call you. More than likely they're busy and they've got a lot of other claims they're trying to process. So don't be afraid to reach out to the adjuster, and make sure that the vendor understands there might be things that they're trying to charge for that they're not going to get paid for by the insurance company. Making sure that the association as a whole, really, again, what the plumber said before me, know where the shutoffs are. That is extremely important. There are a lot of claims that get filed that the damages are so much worse because they spent 30 minutes, an hour even, trying to find where the shutoff valve is. So that is a very important piece of information for multiple people to know, not just you, the CAM. That needs to be something that people who were on site know. If you can get owners to, I always say when somebody buys a condo, they should buy a fan, they should buy a dehumidifier, they should buy an air purifier, and just have them on site. Generators too can be very helpful in the event of a claim. They can be tricky with a condo association on how you're going to get, power to them. And also knowing what goes into a fire watch, because people don't think a lot of times if the power is out and the life safety system isn't working, then you're required to do a fire watch. So who's going to do that? Are you going to hire a third party to do it? Is it going to be owners and board members that are doing it? Property management employees? Make sure that you're aware of what goes into a fire watch. And you also want to make sure that you're tracking all of the hours. If it is people that are working for the management company, whoever it is doing the fire watch, you want to track those hours and submit those as part of your insurance claim. Avoiding fraud and unlicensed contractors is very significant when it comes to a claim and how costly they can be. Assignment of benefits was being abused quite a bit in the state, and that's one of the legislative changes that was made several years ago. So an assignment of benefits gives the rights to the insurance policy over to the contractor that you're signing it for. And that is not something that it's not necessary. You can deal with the contractor and the insurance carrier without having to do an assignment of benefits. I like to test a vendor out by letting them know ahead of time before they even give me an estimate. I'm not signing an assignment of benefits and seeing their reaction. Usually that can weed them out pretty well for you. Checking the Better Business Bureau can be helpful. Checking the DBPR is also a very good resource. You can check the Department of Workers' Comp, the Division of Workers' Comp, for active workers' comp policies or exemptions. Please know that if you hire a contractor and they say, well, I've got an exemption, that only applies to the person the exemption is for. If that contractor has employees, the exemption does not pertain to them, and they need to have a workers' comp policy. I also advise CAMs and board members to do a permit search. If you can search permits by the contractor's name, you can look and see what properties they've worked on recently. You can look and see, are they actually experienced in condo associations and doing, for instance, roofs on condo associations, or are they just doing roofs on single family homes? So that's a good resource to use. And then always ask for referrals. Always ask for referrals. Ask your neighboring properties, ask the other CAMs that you work with, ask us as your, trusted vendors too, to let you know who we know is a reputable company. Use ones that when you attend these type of events, these webinars or the in-person events that you go to that have, the trade shows where a lot of vendors are, the vendors that you're seeing repeatedly, those are good ones to reach out to because they're trying to stay in the area and they're not going to be, gone. You're going to be able to track them down, and they want to make sure that their reputation is strong because they want to keep doing business with all of you. So that brings me down to our recap of key concepts. Most important things: know what your deductibles are, which, a lot of you manage different properties, so that can be a bigger undertaking, I understand, but making sure that the board knows what the deductibles are, even if it's just scheduling a meeting with the agent and the board members so they can have that conversation. Prepare ahead of time, whether it's preparing for hurricane season or just doing prep talk about what happens if we have a fire or a water leak. Preparation is very key. Part of that preparation is your vendors, and then also track the receipts, the invoices, the estimates, the repairs you've made, the payments you've got from the insurance company. I have a spreadsheet that I give out to my customers to help them track what those costs are, because it does not take very long for that to just be more than you can handle. All right, Lindsay, you want to open it up for discussion?
I love when one of us is on mute.
I'm like trying to find the button.
That's why we have two of us, because we can't do it alone. I mean, I tell you, every time I started like 30 minutes late. One time I did it alone. And I thought I was on time. I'm like, we start right on time.
You're like, just kidding, not today, apparently.
I didn't know until later in the anyway, real quick before we go through, we want to make sure that there's time for Q&A now before we go into the the very elaborate evaluation. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. This is a great time to get questions answered. And then also just cannot or want to stress so much that FCA Insurance, we have worked with them for years. And we know buildings, associations, CAMs, management companies that have worked with them and have all the praises for their work, their communications, their efficiency, and like we had said earlier, the thoughtfulness that Kelly and and Star and the rest of the team all provide. What is the code where, okay, how detailed should the fire watch be?
That is a
So
good
I,
question.
yeah, I can answer that. So for Firewatch, I usually hire a company. Um, a lot of them will be on standby. So if you know that there's like a storm coming through that you may need someone, you can have them on standby and they'll report if needed. But if it's an emergency and you have to get maintenance guys to do it or yourself to do it or board members even sometimes volunteer, you have to have a log and you have to walk every floor of the property once an hour. So that's the general requirement. You can also reach out to the fire department. They can send someone off duty and charge you hourly as well, but there are companies that do it. Some security companies do it. But if it's an emergency situation, like after a storm or an unexpected power loss, and it's not something that you're planning for, someone has to walk every floor to check and make sure that there's no fire, and you have to keep a log. So, like the person's name, the date, the time that they checked, and then like a signature that, it was all good on that floor. And I usually do it per floor just to make sure nobody misses anything. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you have to do. And it's unavoidable,
Mhm.
especially if
Okay.
something happens. If something happens and you didn't do that, you're going to have some consequences.
I mean, you can never be more prepared, right? Is that the way you
Correct.
say it? Right. Okay. Okay, well, maybe some questions will come in as we go forward. Here's one that maybe popped in. Is there a threshold requirement for these fire watches?
I
I
guess
don't
I
think
don't
so.
understand the,
And I'm sure it
Um,
probably the fire is gonna information is gonna vary by county.
mhm.
yeah, I would say. You can always call your local fire marshal and they can send you specifications on when it's required and what you specifically have to do, and then resources that they can give you information for on, who you can reach out to in the event of an emergency or a planned situation where you would need fire watch.
Mhm.
They're
And
very
I've
helpful.
actually called several fire marshals throughout the state, and they're very friendly and eager to help.
Yep.
There you go.
Makes their life much easier when you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Well, let's go through the evaluation.
All righty. You want me to do them, or you guys want
I'll
to do it?
You can we'll do it together. You just, if you want to run it, and I'll open the chat up and
Okay.
we'll do it together.
All right. Question one. Which type of insurance typically covers rising water from storm surge? Windstorm policy, B, flood insurance, C, liability policy, or D, property insurance?
We had a bunch of B's out the gate. B.
That's right. Flood insurance. I'm not going to get that from your property insurance policy. All right, question number two. Hurricane deductibles in Florida are usually calculated as a flat dollar amount, B, percentage of insured value, C, monthly dues, or D, vendor estimate.
And some B's, some A's.
That's gonna be B. It's a percentage of the insured values. So for instance, if you have a single family home and you have a homeowner's insurance policy, whatever the value of your home is, you're gonna have a deductible that's a percentage applied to that value. And I would say it's probably a good way to kind of open your eyes to insurance is to look at your own individual policy. Because that's fun for everybody, right? That's what everybody wants to do.
Hmm.
Mhm. Question
Or
three.
or
Wind-driven
send it to
rain is typically covered under A, flood insurance, B, windstorm property policy, C, auto insurance, or D, liability policy.
Okay. Most B's, some people put A.
All right, so
Oh
the answer
no.
is B, a windstorm and property policy, wind-driven rain. Question 4. Who typically coordinates emergency vendors after a disaster? A, residents. B, insurance company only. C, CAM/board. Or D, city officials.
I think it's unanimous on C.
All right, we all know. Everybody here knows, unfortunately.
Very challenging questions. We make these evaluations,
Yeah, it's
right?
hard. It's hard.
Very hard, very hard.
What is the first step after property damage occurs? A, file taxes. B, document damage. C, replace items. Or D, call your accountant.
I need to file taxes.
I know. When I read that one, I thought, did I do that?
Did I do that?
I
Have I
do
done that? I literally write on my planner every week. Taxes would be great.
that?
Every week.
All
Taxes
right.
would be great.
The answer is B, document damage. Question number 6. Flood insurance is most commonly required in A, all properties, B, high-risk flood zones, C, only inland areas, or D, never.
Okay. Most B's, some A's.
All
Those
right,
A
so
people.
high-risk flood zones is where it's required. Now, doesn't mean you don't need to have it, but high risk is where it's required. Question 7. What document outlines coverage, limits, and deductibles? A, lease agreement. B, declaration page. C, HOA newsletter. Or D, vendor contract.
B's.
All right, B, declaration page.
Are they all B's? I wonder.
All right, question 8. Claim delays are often caused by A, too much documentation. B, lack of documentation. C, fast reporting. Or D, small damages.
B's have it.
All right, that's correct. Lack of documentation is not good. Question 9. Who may ultimately share responsibility for deductibles? A, only the insurance company. B, only vendors. C, association and unit owners. Or D, city.
Oh, it's a C this time.
Yes, yep.
Love
Association
it.
and unit owners are responsible for the deductible. All right, last question. Best strategy to reduce liability exposure, which I didn't really talk about a lot today, so we can touch on that for a minute. But A, ignore risks. B, prepare and plan ahead. C, cancel insurance. Or D, wait for damage.
And the B's have it.
That's right. Prepare and plan ahead. Liability issues are unfortunately a common occurrence for us here in Florida. We have a very litigious state. People like to sue for all kinds of reasons. Having surveillance cameras is a big deterrent. So if anybody's got properties with surveillance cameras, we do recommend that you check and see how long that footage is kept, because a lot of the people who make their living on filing fraudulent claims have learned that that footage is usually only kept for like 2 weeks or 30 days. So if you can extend that to 6 months or a year, there's usually a cost that's incurred with that, but definitely look into that. And if there is an incident that you know of, go ahead and pull that footage and save it someplace. So if a lawsuit occurs, you've got it saved to show what the extenuating circumstances might be.
Yeah, that's such a good tip that you've gone over in previous courses. I'm glad you brought that up again. Okay, everyone, if there's no other questions, we highly recommend that you take a picture of the screen. You can cut and paste the words in my chat text to schedule a consultation for your association with Kelly. They do service the entire state of Florida, correct?
Yep.
Yes. And we know that budget season is upon us. Oh boy, budget season. So you need good partners in your corner, and you need people that respond to emails, and you need people that, follow up with you where you're not having to think about following up with them. You need people that are on your side when it comes to all things insurance, as things change often. And people like Kelly, people like Star, companies like FCA Insurance, who are educating, who are involved in legislation, and who are involved in the association industry, they're on top of it. So make sure your insurance agent is doing all of those things. And if they aren't, we highly recommend you give FCA Insurance a call.
Absolutely. Well said.
Good.
Thank you both so
Carol?
much. Thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank
Gosh,
you.
that hair looks so good. We're gonna send you a date for a lunch date with us.
Yes, thank you. All right. Bye,
Okay, thanks.
everybody.
Have a good day.
Thanks.